My name is Deborah and I'm 17 years old. I was born blind. Completely blind. I couldn't see the faces of my parents, the colors of the sky, or the world around me. I lived in a small village called Ajwa in the southern part of South Africa, where most people believed that blindness was a curse or punishment. Even from childhood, many didn't treat me like a normal person. Some people whispered that I had been born with a hidden sin, others said my parents must have done something wrong for God to let this happen. But my parents never gave up on me. They taught me to be strong and to pray. Even though I had never seen light, I could feel something powerful whenever I prayed. It felt like someone was listening closely to me, more than anyone else ever did. As I grew, I stopped hoping for physical sight. But deep in my heart, I still felt like my life had a meaning, like I wasn't just here to suffer. I spent my days listening to Bible readings, praying quietly, and singing worship songs. Sometimes I would even wake up at night with dreams that I didn't understand, dreams of fire, battles, and people with glowing eyes. I didn't know what they meant, but I never forgot them. Then something unusual happened one night. In a dream, I saw a tall figure dressed in white. He called himself Daniel. His voice wasn't loud, but it had weight. He told me, "Deborah, your life is not an accident. You were born for something greater. You must go on a 21-day fast, only water. It will be hard, but the light you have never known will be given to you." When I woke up, my body felt strange, almost heavy, and the words stayed in my heart like fire. I didn't understand how a blind girl like me could fast for so long, but I knew I had to obey. Something inside me told me that this was a call from God, not just a dream. When I decided to begin the fast, I didn't tell many people. Only my mother knew. I sat her down quietly and said, "Mama, God is asking me to do something. I need to fast for 21 days and I can only take water." At first she looked afraid. She said I was too young, too weak, and that I might fall sick or even die. But I told her that this wasn't something I chose on my own. I felt it deep in my spirit. This was an instruction from heaven. On the first day, I drank only water and prayed quietly in my room. My body felt fine, but my mind was full of questions. What if nothing happened? What if I heard wrong? But each time doubt came, I remembered the voice in the dream. "You were born for something greater." By the fourth day, I began to feel the effects. My body grew weak. My legs trembled when I tried to stand. Sometimes I felt dizzy. But something else began to happen too. My heart began to open in ways I couldn't explain. When I prayed, it no longer felt like I was just talking to God. It felt like He was in the room with me, listening with full attention. By the seventh day, things became harder. My head ached constantly. I felt cold even under my blanket. But my spirit grew stronger. I began to see things in my dreams, clearer than ever before. I saw people in chains crying out for help. I saw a wide road full of crowds walking toward a cliff, and no one seemed to notice. I even saw myself standing in front of a group, warning them, and some listened, but many laughed and walked away. Around the 10th day, I woke up from sleep with tears on my face. I had dreamt of a woman in my village who had been kind to me. But in the dream, I saw something dark clinging to her back, whispering lies into her ears. I didn't know what it meant, but I prayed for her that morning. Later that day, my mother came back from the market and said that woman had almost taken her life after drinking heavily, but someone found her in time. That's when I realized I was beginning to see spiritual things, even though my eyes were still blind. By day 15, I could barely move without help. My body had become bones and skin. My mother begged me to stop. She cried and told me God would understand, but I said, "Mama, I have to finish it. I know this isn't for nothing." On the night of the 21st day, everything changed. It started with a light. A bright, burning light came into my room. I didn't see it with my physical eyes, because I was still blind, but I could feel it all around me. Then I saw Daniel again. This time he wasn't in a dream. He was real. Or at least more real than anything I had ever experienced. He told me, "You have passed the test. The Lord is opening your eyes, but not just to the world. You will see into the Spirit." And in that moment, something like a wind blew through my face. I screamed. My mother rushed in, panicked. But I was not the same. For the first time in my life, I saw her. I saw her eyes, her hands, her tears. I could see the walls of my room, the old curtain, the wooden floor. I could see. But even more than that, I could see through things. I looked at my mother again, and behind her, I saw something dark, like a shadow trying to cling to her shoulder. I blinked, thinking my eyes were confused, but it didn't go away. When I looked outside through the window, I saw neighbors walking by, and some had light around them, but others had strange shapes following them, shapes I didn't understand yet. I didn't know it at the time, but I was seeing spirits, both good and evil. That night I didn't sleep. I sat and cried. Not because I was afraid, but because I knew my life would never be the same again. God had opened not just my physical eyes, but my spiritual eyes too. After my sight was restored, news spread quickly across the village. People were shocked. They called it a miracle. Some came to see for themselves if I was truly healed. When they stood before me, I described their clothes, their faces, even the marks on their skin. And when they asked how it happened, I simply told them, God opened my eyes after 21 days of fasting and prayer. But not everyone believed. Some whispered that I was using charms. Others warned their children to stay away from me. A few even said I was possessed. But I wasn't surprised. When the light comes, the darkness always fights it. About 3 days after my sight came, I had another vision. This time it was not Daniel, it was someone even more powerful. I was in a quiet place, full of peace, and then a warrior appeared before me, shining like fire and lightning. I knew instantly that it was the Archangel Michael. He stood tall, with eyes that saw straight into my heart. He said to me, Deborah, you now see what most cannot. The Lord has trusted you with spiritual sight. But you must learn how to fight. Many are in chains. You will help free them. Then he gave me a simple prayer. He called it the prayer of binding. He told me it wasn't magic, it wasn't for show, and it wouldn't work without a pure heart. He said, use this when you see the enemy holding someone captive. Speak it in faith. The Lord will act. When I woke up, the prayer was still in my mind. I whispered it aloud, word for word, and each time I said it, I felt something shift in the air, like the heavens were listening. The next day, a young man came to our home. He was known in the village for being violent and addicted to drugs. His mother had brought him, begging for help. As soon as he walked in, I saw a dark, snake-like spirit coiled around his body. It wasn't visible to anyone else, but to me it was clear. I asked him gently if I could pray. He agreed, though he didn't look serious. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and spoke the prayer of binding just as I had been taught. Instantly, he fell to the ground and started crying, shaking like he was in pain. His mother screamed, thinking he was dying, but I knew what was happening. The spirit was losing its hold. After a few minutes, he became still. Then he opened his eyes and looked at me, truly looked at me, as if he had just woken up from a long, dark dream. He hugged his mother and wept. That was the first of many. Over the next few weeks, more people came, some addicted to alcohol, others filled with anger, depression, or fear. And each time I prayed the prayer of binding, something changed. Not always dramatic, but always real. A light would return to their eyes, peace would return to their homes. But the more people I helped, the more I became a target. At night, I began to feel strange attacks. My dreams were no longer peaceful. I would see shadows pressing against my window, hear voices mocking me, and sometimes wake up unable to breathe. It was clear that the enemy was not happy with what I was doing. Still, I did not stop. Because each time I prayed, each time someone was set free, I felt the presence of God wrap around me like a blanket. I knew He was with me. But the greatest battle was still ahead. It wasn't long before I realized that spiritual sight came with spiritual battles. Not the kind you can see with your natural eyes or fight with your hands, but the kind that takes place in the unseen world, where thoughts, emotions, and choices are influenced by invisible forces. The attacks against me grew stronger. One night, I was praying for a woman who had been suffering from terrible nightmares. As I laid my hand on her shoulder and began to speak the prayer of binding, she suddenly screamed and pushed me to the ground. Her voice changed. It wasn't her voice anymore. It was deeper, angry, hateful. The demon inside her shouted, "Leave her alone. She belongs to us." I was terrified for a moment, but I remembered what Michael had told me in the vision. Don't fear. Speak with authority. So I stood up, weak but firm, and continued the prayer. I called on the power of God to release her. She fell to the floor, shaking violently, and then went still. When she woke up, she didn't remember anything, but the fear in her eyes was gone. She was free. That night, as I walked home, I knew my mission was clear. This wasn't just about me being healed. It was about setting others free from what they couldn't see, but what had always been holding them down. But not everyone celebrated. Our pastor, the one I had grown up listening to, called me into his office one Sunday after church. He looked troubled and said, "Deborah, I've heard what you've been doing. People say you're praying for others, casting out demons and saying things about spirits. I want to warn you. This is dangerous. These things don't happen anymore. Don't deceive people." My heart broke. I respected him so much. But I also knew what I had seen and what God was doing. I tried to explain, but he shook his head. He even told some members of the church to stay away from me. Then came the doctors. One afternoon, a woman who worked in the nearby clinic came to our home with a man in a white coat. He introduced himself as a doctor from the city. He had heard my story and wanted to examine me. He said, "You were born blind, yet now you can see. We believe there may be some strange brain activity. You might need treatment." When I told him about the visions and spiritual encounters, he grew quiet. Later that week, he returned with 2 other men and suggested I be taken to the hospital for observation. It became clear to me they thought I was sick, that I was imagining things. But I wasn't, because even as they spoke to me, I could see it, a shadow resting on one of them. Its mouth never stopped moving. It was whispering lies to him, twisting truth. I prayed silently, not wanting to cause a scene, and the spirit turned its face toward me, but this time it fled. I knew then that the world would never understand fully what was happening in the spirit. But I also knew I had to keep going. The pressure was building. I started feeling spiritually attacked in my sleep again, more violently this time. There were nights I woke up screaming, feeling like something had clawed my back. My mother began praying with me more. She stayed up late, fasting too, standing with me like a warrior. But the most painful moment came when my best friend, Blessing, stopped speaking to me. She said her parents told her I was dangerous, and that I might transfer spirits to her. I cried for 3 nights straight. It hurt more than the demons. But even in my pain, God reminded me, this journey wasn't about being accepted. It was about obedience. Because in the middle of the fight, lives were being changed. Addicts were becoming clean. Broken homes were being restored. Children who used to have nightmares were now sleeping in peace. People were turning back to prayer, back to worship, back to God. And I was learning something powerful. When you walk with God and obey His voice, even in pain, even in loneliness, you carry light into the darkest places. After many weeks of prayer, fasting, and spiritual battles, something began to shift in the atmosphere of our village. It didn't happen suddenly like a lightning strike. It came softly, quietly, like morning light rising over the hills. More people started coming to me, not just the broken or the addicted, but also those who had once doubted. Even some of the elders who had once warned others about me now came with questions. "Deborah," they would ask, "how can I hear from God for myself? Or, can I really be free from these spiritual problems?" I didn't have fancy answers. I only shared what I knew, that God still speaks, that He still heals, and that He wants us to walk closely with Him. I showed them the prayer I was given. I prayed with them, cried with them, and sometimes just sat in silence beside them. And slowly the revival began. People started meeting outside under the mango tree near our house. They came in the evening with lamps, Bibles, and broken hearts. We prayed. We worshiped. Some confessed sins openly and asked for help. Families were reunited. Some even gave up positions of corruption and returned stolen things. It wasn't about me anymore. It was never supposed to be. This was about God reaching out to His children again. And I was just one of many He had chosen to use. One night as we prayed, I saw something in the spirit, a great light hovering over the village, and underneath it, chains were falling from people like dry leaves. I understood it clearly. Freedom had come. Not without pain. Not without resistance. But it came. Around that time, I had a final vision of the angel Michael. This time he didn't come with a message, but with a question. He asked, "Deborah, will you carry this fire beyond this place?" I said yes without thinking. And then he pointed, and I saw a path leading away from my village, toward a school full of books, teachers, and young people. That was when I knew what I needed to do next. I would go study God's Word deeply. Not just for myself, but to help others understand this invisible world we live in, the power of prayer, the danger of spiritual blindness, and the hope that comes from walking with God. Today I'm preparing to attend Bible college. I'm still 17. I still face attacks. But now I know who I am. I know who God is. And I know why I was born blind, so that when my eyes were finally opened, I would see not just this world, but the truth. To anyone listening to my story, I want you to understand something very serious and true. We are all in a battle, whether we see it or not. There are forces fighting over your thoughts, your decisions, your purpose. But there is also a God who loves you and wants to open your eyes. Not just your natural eyes, but your spirit. He doesn't ask for perfect people. He asks for willing hearts. He reveals himself to those who seek him with truth. He lets us know that prayer is not a game. That the Bible is not just a book. That fasting is not just about suffering. These are powerful tools, gifts from heaven. If you say you believe in God, then take your walk with him seriously. Don't just go to church for show. Pray even when you don't feel like it. Study his word like your life depends on it, because it does. Love people. Forgive them. Help the broken. And protect your heart from pride. We are in the last days, and God is looking for people who will carry his light into the darkness. Be one of them. Would you like me to help you structure this into a visual or spoken script next?